Welcome. I'm Richard Hosnout, and I'm your host for the Wisdom Inspired Life podcast and this YouTube channel. Great to have you back. Well, this particular episode is going to be taken from Paramahansa Yogananda's wonderful exposition and providing of insights on the Christian Bible. It just will bring it very real, very relevant, very clear, interpreted by a God-realized being. The second coming of Christ, the resurrection of Christ within you. And this is obviously part of the Words of Wisdom series. On the podcast, I dive into quotes from this particular book very deeply. Every Saturday, a new podcast is released. The Wisdom Inspired Life podcast on Saturday is released with extensive quotes from this in a 10 or 15 minute episode, and that'll be continuing for years to be able to share everything from that I think is good, and part of what the podcast is all about. So, having said that, there was a quote that I read in the course of reading this, as I do on a daily basis, that I wanted to share with you here. And it comes from Paramahansa Yogananda. I talked about earlier about he is the founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship, which experienced its 100th birthday in 2020. He came to the United States with the purpose of bringing together a number of things, bringing together the teachings of Christianity and Hinduism, the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, to show how the core essence of those teachings were really exactly the same. As a God-realized being, he is also provided in the Self-Realization Fellowship a great depth and breadth of books and lessons. And if you become a member, you can get 2 years, up 2+ years of week-by-week video and written lessons. Very, very, very helpful. The temples are on 6 continents, and if you go in one, you see among pictures of his masters and everything, along with Jesus and Krishna, underscoring Christianity and Hinduism. And all of this is available in 20 languages. Unfortunately, this YouTube channel will be in the only language I know, which is English. My parents were Dutch, and they wanted to teach me Dutch, and I was resistant to it, and the only time I regretted that was around Christmas time, when they would talk to each other in Dutch about Christmas presents and everything. Would have been nice to know. Anyway, so with that said, I'm going to be sharing with you one long quote from this. For those grammarians out there, this will be a run-on sentence, that is for sure. Not uncommon in wisdom texts, by the way. There are a number of wisdom texts that I've read that have very, very long sentences. So, the quote that I'm going to share with you is to better understand the divine souls on earth and his deep insight into the role and importance of intuition to access wisdom. Earlier episodes in this YouTube channel have talked about the importance of wisdom and accessing intuition as the voice of the soul and accessing it through the practice of meditation. And again, you can hear much more about the Wisdom Inspired Life relative to this particular book in the podcast itself. So let's get into the quote. Divine souls do not speak from book knowledge or from intellectual imagination. That's not where their brilliance comes from. Does not come from book knowledge or from intellectual knowledge that fancies its own realisms and absolutes. They speak only the truth that they hear, the inner voice, perceive, and see through the all-knowing power of soul intuition. Okay? In an earlier episode, I contrasted knowledge with wisdom and how knowledge is very imperfect. It's very subjective. whereas wisdom is very objective. Okay? So they speak only, divine souls speak only truth that they hear, perceive, and see through the all-knowing power of soul intuition. Okay? No mortal man who depends upon the testimony of his limited senses can grasp the depth and magnitude of truth perceived by persons of self-realization. It's absolutely impossible when we deal with and interface with the world through just our five senses and do not have a developed soul intuition, the voice of God through our soul. Intuition is that deep, perfect understanding, the objective understanding. And I talk also in that wisdom versus knowledge episode about the five senses and how each of those five senses are very limited, very unreliable in many, many ways, many inaccuracies. And you can go in and understand that better. Okay? Persons of self-realization are very, very few on earth. The only one that I'm very sure of is the Dalai Lama. There are others who don't appear in broadly in public like the Dalai Lama does, and there's also our Paramahansa Nityananda in the world today also. But the number of people who are self-realized, God-realized, enlightened, however you want to talk about it, have advanced through superconsciousness, Christ consciousness, and cosmic consciousness to essentially graduate from the need to be a human. Okay? But uplifted souls who develop their intuition by meditation can not only comprehend the truth declared by prophets, and again, intuition developed by meditation. Meditation is the core practice for anyone wanting to advance steadily and significantly along the spiritual path and to increasingly be able to access intuition and wisdom. Okay? Uplifted souls develop their intuition by meditation. Okay? But prove it to themselves through the experience they authenticate, the unchallengeable seal, if you will, of intuitional conviction, the seer's ecstatic proclamation that God is the only true eternal substance. Lots here. Intuition is, when clearly heard through a practice of developing meditation and being able to access intuition, the voice of your soul. And then language is not good here. We don't have words to kind of describe it, but I'm going to use the word hear our intuition, even though it's not usually not words that you hear through your ears. It's a voice that a sense of knowing is probably the better way to describe it. A sense of deep knowing is how I experience intuition. And I talked about how, as I was in advance of developing this YouTube channel, going through a review of what I wanted to do in the next chapter of my life. And when this possibility, a Wisdom Inspired Life YouTube channel, came into my awareness, there was a deep, deep inner knowing that this was my life purpose, my mission. And then when I work on this, there's a great sense of purpose, but also a great sense of joy. I digress. Okay? So that's the unchallengeable seal of intuitional conviction that the seer's ecstatic proclamation that God is the only true eternal substance. And I've talked a little bit about that earlier. Up until about age 40, I probably didn't believe in God, didn't know God, didn't even think about God. And now it is, God is everything. He created everything. God is. And our purpose along the spiritual journey is to wake up and reconnect with God. All the phenomena of nature, which is everything around us, are but waves of spirit playing on the infinite bosom. Waves of spirit go back to what I've talked about previously, and that is that everything that we consider real in our world, that we consider reality, there is no solid matter at all anywhere. And that's why our five senses, like I'm going to knock on this table and go, what do you mean? That's solid as heck. It hurts my knuckles. Well, everything in our world is electromagnetic energy, waves of energy that appear on the screen of ether projected by God. And all of that is just mind snapping. I get that. But along the journey, to the extent that you can grow in a number of different dimensions through meditation and reading of wisdom texts and things of that nature, the more you come to realize it. And if you're a person of science, all you need to do is study every quantum physicist on planet Earth today, and they will all tell you exactly what I just said, that there is no solid matter. You can go back to my episode on the world is extraordinarily different than you think it is. Watch that video that I produced and all the quotes that are out there, including Einstein, talking about the fact that there is nothing solid in our universe. It's all energy. Okay? Well, as always, if you'd like to know more, I've already said that relative to quotes from the Second Coming of Christ book that Yogananda has read, there's an extensive series of sequential quotes over many episodes, new ones released every Saturday. You can learn more there. You can go to the mywisdominspiredlife.com. It's kind of a center point, a bridging point between the podcast and this YouTube channel, and where you can listen to the podcast there as well as on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all the other places. Well, as you probably know, I'm on a journey, and I appreciate you being with me in today's part of that journey. And I look forward to continuing that journey with you.